Greetings, fellow auto-travelers! We continue our journey through Portugal and go to the city of Guimarães.
This city is called the cradle of the Portuguese nation, and on one of the buildings a huge inscription stands. Portugal was born here. In this film, we will discuss whether this statement is consistent with historical events and facts.
The lands on which Guimarães is located were occupied at the end of the 9th century during the Reconquista by warriors under the command of Guimarães. We have talked about him in the film about Bragança.
Guimarães became the first count of Portugal. Guimarães' son, Lucidio, was called Lucidio Guimarães in the name of his father. The land he owned was also called Guimarães.
This inheritance passed to his granddaughter, Madonna Diaz, who is called the Fundadora, that is, the founder of the settlement, which was first called Guimarães, but gradually turned into Guimarães.
In 950, Madonna Diaz founded a double monastery here, that is, a male monastery next to a female one.
The monastery was initially dedicated to Saint Mehmed. He is considered the patron of sheep and goats, and he was engaged in cheesemaking. But in iconography he is depicted riding a lion.
To protect the monasteries, Madonna ordered to build a castle on the hill. Two settlements appeared nearby, by the monastery and by the castle.
And around these two settlements, the city of Guimarães expanded.
On the square, which is located approximately halfway between the monastery and the castle, a monument to Madonna Diaz has been erected.
Behind it, there is a building of the city court, and this is how the monument looks from the castle.
The castle in Guimarães was built mainly to protect against the Normans, also known as Vikings, who sailed by boats through the seas and then moved up the rivers to plunder.
The first wooden building of the castle, called the Castle of San Miguel, was constructed in the 10th century.
In the 11th century, stone walls were built up, resting on the boulders or granite. These walls have been preserved on the north side of the castle.
In the 12th century, walls were erected along the grand perimeter, in the form of a heraldic shield, though even so without wall towers.
The main tower inside the castle and 8 towers on the fortress wall were built in the 13th century.
The castle in Guimarães was besieged during dynastic wars, but by the beginning of the 16th century it has lost its military role. The castle was used as a prison and was gradually turned to ruins.
In the 18th century, one of the castle's towers was dismantled as the stones were used to repair church buildings nearby.
In the 19th century, at the city council, a proposal to demolish the castle and use the stones for paving the streets was rejected.
A similar case took place in the German city of Lübeck, and you can learn more about this from our video about this city.
Only in 1891, the castle was recognized as a Class 1 historical monument, and it gradually began to be restored.
Next to the castle, there is a monument to the first king of Portugal, Afonso the Great, or Afonso Henriques, whom we have already mentioned in the film about Bragança.
This monument was erected in 1834, used to stand on two city squares, and ultimately was moved closer to the castle in 1940.
In the year 2001, another monument to this king was erected in Guimarães, on the square called Larga da Misericórdia.
But the highest honor to Afonso Henriques was given when the city stadium was named after him.
While we are driving along Guimarães, we will try to figure out why the citizens honor this man so much.
It is believed that Afonso was born in Guimarães and was baptized in the Saint Miguel church.
At the time, Guimarães was the capital of the county of Portugal.
Afonso's father and Count of Portugal was a Frenchman, Henry of Burgundy, but he died when Afonso was 3 years of age. From him, the boy was called Onyekwe, that is, the son of Henrik.
Afonso's mother, Teresa of Leon, who was 16 years old at that time, started ruling the county of Portugal as part of the Kingdom of Leon.
She was the daughter of the King of Leon, Afonso VI, but by that time he had died and Teresa's half-sister, Urraca, ruled Leon.
Urraca decided to marry the King of Aragon, Afonso the Warrior. Here is a monument to him in Saragossa, which we shall talk about another day.
The Kingdom of Leon consisted of 3 parts: Galicia, Leon, and Castile. The Galicians were not the fans of the union with Aragon, so they revolted. Shortly before these events, Galicia was divided into 2 counties, Galicia and Portugal, and Teresa stood in opposition to her sister.
Urraca quickly quarreled and proceeded to divorce with her husband, making a war break out between Leon, Castile and Aragon.
As a result, Urraca was forced to urgently reconcile with the western regions of the kingdom. She had to recognize the county of Galicia as a kingdom, led by her 6-year-old son, Afonso Raimundes. He was so named after his father, Count of Galicia, Raymond of Burgundy, cousin of Henry, who was in respect the father of Afonso Enriquez.
And so Portugal has become a kingdom, and Teresa became known as Regina Teresia de Portugal.
She was recognized by the Queen Urraca, young Afonso Raimundes, and even Pope Pascal II.
That makes Teresa the first monarch of Portugal.
But it was difficult for Teresa to cope with the country, so she called for help from the Galician brothers, Raimundo and Fernando Perez de Traba, who became governors of Viseu and Coimbra respectively.
The help was comprehensive in a rather reproductive manner. Bermuda married Teresa's daughter, whose name was Urraca Enriquez.
Along with that, Fernando Traba and Queen Teresa had 2 daughters, youngest of whom, also Teresa, later became the wife of the King of Leon, also Fernando.
In this whirlwind, Teresa didn't have enough attention for her son, Afonso Enriquez, thus giving him to the education of the tycoon Egas Monitz.
Egas became, in fact, the second father to the future king and repeatedly rescued him.
At the age of 11, Afonso Enriquez returned to his mother's court. He didn't like the fact that the country was ruled by the Traba brothers, making him fall under the influence of their enemy, the Archbishop of Braga, Paio Mendes.
This led to a conflict with Queen Teresa, so the young prince and the Archbishop fled to Zamora.
There Afonso Enriquez was knighted, gathered an army, and went to rule Portugal.
But the international situation has shifted. Urraca died, and Leon Castile Galicia was ruled by her son, the same Raimundes, who proclaimed himself King Afonso VII.
He decided to consider Portugal a kingdom no more, pushing there on a campaign to force its rulers to give him a vassal oath.
Afonso VII laid siege to Guimarães in 1127. Afonso Enriquez, being on the spot, instructed Egas Monitz to give the oath of allegiance on his behalf, and the siege was lifted.
And in 1128, one of the most important, but also the most mysterious events of Portuguese history took place, the Battle of San Miguel.
The only thing that is known for sure about it is the date. The battle took place on June 24th, 1128, on the day of Saint John the Baptist.
In this clash, the Portuguese supporting Afonso Enriquez defeated the supporters of Queen Teresa.
It's frankly unbelievable that the Portuguese nation was born as a result of this engagement. Large and small feudal lords of the northwest of the Iberian Peninsula battled to reclaim territories from each other, where some of them later became part of Portugal, others fell under the rule of Castile and became part of Spain.
One may say that the Galician strangers fought on Teresa's side, but 900 years ago, both in terms of the language and other characteristics, the two sides hardly differed in any major way.
For example, the language that was spoken at the time is called Galician Portuguese, that is, the tongue was one and the same.
Afonso Henriques was knighted in the Cathedral of Zamora, which is in our plans to talk about in future films. Zamora was located in Leon, and if desired, Afonso Henriques, son of Henry of Burgundy and Teresa of Leon, can be considered a Knight of Leon.
The battle was named San Miguel, after the castle in Guimarães, though the exact place has not been found.
A small battle memorial with 7 abstract sculptures is erected 5 kilometers from the castle. However, there is no archaeological evidence of the Battle of San Miguel taking place there.
Just next to the memorial, the ultra-modern Church of San Miguel was built.
The number of soldiers participating in the battle is not reported, even in approximation.
According to some sources, Afonso Henriques initially lost the battle and fled, but the warriors of Egas Monash came to the rescue and changed the course of the battle.
The consequences of the Battle of San Miguel are not entirely clear though. Afonso Henriques ruled Portugal from Guimarães for a while before the battle.
According to some sources, he imprisoned his mother Teresa in the castle of Lanhoso, while others say that she went to Galicia to the Monte de Rama monastery.
In 1130, Teresa died, and her remains were solemnly buried by Afonso Henriques in the Cathedral of Braga. The headstone says Regina Theresia, Queen Teresa.
That makes the victory of the son over his mother nowhere near an epoch-making event. In the city of Ponte de Lima, a monument has been erected to Queen Teresa.
Looks like we are now driving along the street named after her.
After the Battle of San Miguel, Afonso Henriques did not become king. He did not call himself a count, but gave himself the title of a prince.
Only 15 years after the battle, a treaty was signed in Zamora, in which Afonso Henriques and Afonso VII recognized each other as the King of Portugal and the Emperor of Spain, respectively.
For the city of Guimarães, the Battle of San Miguel has hindered its development, since 3 years after it, Afonso Henriques moved to the capital of Coimbra, which we will tell you about in a future film.
The mark of Guimarães could not be found on the map of the Kingdom of Portugal by 1150.
Immediately after moving to Coimbra, Afonso founded the Santa Cruz Monastery, where he was buried.
It turns out that the only original source of information about the Battle of San Miguel is the Chronicle of the Monks of Santa Cruz.
They reported that since the battle took place on the day of Saint John the Baptist, then the divine forces empowered the victor. And guess what? No military details.
Probably if the Battle of San Miguel took place at all, it was likely a minor skirmish, which contemporaries didn't pay much importance to.
But the monks needed a great event to show the magnitude of the founder of the monastery. And many years after those events, they described the battle in a politically correct way.
This phenomenon is not at all unique. As an example from Russian history, the main source of information about the Battle of Kulikovo is a poem.
The site of Battle of Kulikovo has been indicated accurately with a museum standing there, although many years of archaeological excavations have not revealed traces of the battle in the field.
But as all Russian schoolchildren know about the Battle of Kulikovo, so all Portuguese schoolchildren know about the Battle of San Miguel, which is referred to in the textbooks as the first day of Portugal.
Though the question stands, what should be considered true? An accepted belief or something covered by facts?
Here is a three-storied building near the castle. This is the palace of the Dukes of Braganza.
We talked about the first Duke of Braganza, Afonso, in the film about Chaves.
From his father, King João I, Afonso received vast estates, including Guimarães, where he decided to build a fancy house.
Since Afonso traveled Europe a lot, the palace in Guimarães was built in the style of French mansions.
Subsequently, the Dukes of Braganza made their residence the palace at the city of Vila Viçosa in Alentejo, closer to Lisbon.
We have also visited Vila Viçosa and know the viewers of the Ducal Palace, the monument of the 6th Duke of Braganza, and the churches in the central square.
The palace in Guimarães began to decay, and by 1807 military barracks were located there.
The house of the Dukes of Braganza was gradually turned to bricks and stones, as it was dismantled for building materials.
Although the building was luckily declared a national monument in 1910, restoration works were carried out only in the 1930s.
In 1959, the building received the status of the official residence of the President of Portugal in the north of the country.
Now the third floor is reserved for this residence. The second is housing a museum, and various exhibitions are held on the first.
To the west of the castle, you may see the building of the former Capuchin monastery.
The monks arrived in Guimarães in the middle of the 17th century and used the aforementioned stones from the castle and the palace of the dukes to build the monastery.
In the middle of the 19th century, the building of the monastery was rebuilt in the neoclassical style to host a hospital.
Now the building houses a museum.
To the southwest of the ducal palace is a complex of religious buildings.
Church Nossa Senhora de Carmo was built in the 17th century in the Baroque style and is dedicated to Saint Teresa.
Next is the Chapel of the Virgin Mary, with a large painting on the wall in the azulejo style.
And further on is the House of Santa Estefania. It is a social institution that houses a school, a kindergarten, and social services.
In general, there are many temples in Guimarães.
The most famous church is Nossa Senhora da Oliveira. It is located where Madonna Dias founded a monastery back in the 10th century. Now it is the historical center of the city.
Pedro Julian served in this church as a priest. He later became the only pope of the Portuguese descent under the name of John the 21st.
In the square of Brazil in Guimarães, there was a small chapel dedicated to Nossa Senhora da Consolação. In 1785, a huge Baroque temple was erected in its place.
The small church in Igreja de San Damaso was built in the 17th century in the city center, but in the 1960s it was neatly moved closer to the castle.
The temple is dedicated to Saint Damasios. He was the first Roman bishop to call himself Pope. It is believed that he was born in Guimarães, although the city was founded 650 years after the birth of Damasios.
And now, information for our fellow travelers.
We entered Guimarães on our way from Braga.
On the way, we turned to the little supermarket, where we stocked up on food and had a snack.
While we were examining the city, our rental car was left in the Larga Martin Sarmenta parking lot with a parking meter.
And then, from the castle wall, we saw a large public parking lot. Later we drove beside it on our way to Chaves.
We recommend this parking lot for future car travelers.
And we, your guides.
Konstantin Krasovsky.
Tatiana Andreeva.
And me, Leo Krasovsky, are going further to the city of Shavish.
And you can already see a film about this city right after watching this video.
In order not to miss the following videos about Portugal and other countries, make sure to subscribe to our channel.
Press the like button and share the video with your friends.
See you in another city or country.